Move your damn car, or I'll move it!
I locked eyes with the HOA president as her $300,000 Bentley blocked my barn doors sideways. Inside, my newborn calf was crying out, weak and fading fast. I was on with the emergency vet, voice breaking, pleading for them to rush over. She just stood there in her shades, arms folded, smirking like my panic was entertainment. Diesel rumble from my idling John Deere clashed with her fancy perfume in the hot air. For 6 months, she'd hammered us with fake fines, $500, $1,000 at a time, because I refused to sell my ranch to her developer pals. She knew my wife's cancer bills had left us broke. Thought a grieving widower with calloused hands wouldn't touch her precious toy. Wrong. Next came 20 tons of John Deere fury, forgotten federal farm laws, and the priciest lesson this county ever saw. What's your worst HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. My name's Jake Morrison, and this ranch has been in my family since 1987. 40 acres where the morning air still carries the sweet smell of hay mixed with diesel fuel from my grandfather's old John Deere. He built our barn with his own calloused hands. My father expanded it, and I was supposed to pass it down to Emma. That was before the cancer bills. Sarah fought for 18 months, out-of-state specialists, experimental treatments, and hope that cost us everything we'd saved. When she passed last winter, the antiseptic smell from those hospital visits still clung to my clothes for weeks, a sterile reminder of how medical debt can gut a family faster than any tornado. Emma's been my rock, helping with 5 a.m. feeds before school, boots crunching on frost-covered gravel as we check the cattle. She never complains when dinner's beans and rice again, never mentions how her classmates have new phones while she patches holes in her work jeans. Then, Vivian Blackstone moved in next door. $2.3 million for what she calls a farmhouse mansion on the old Patterson place. It's got more square footage than my entire operation, and a kitchen that cost more than I'll see in 5 years. The woman wanted authentic rural charm, without any actual rural inconvenience. Kind of like ordering a steak but complaining about the cow. First meeting, she's standing at our fence line in heels that cost more than my feed budget. Designer everything, blonde hair that's never seen honest work, looking at my operation like I'd personally lowered her property values. "You're the neighbor with all the noise," she announced. Not hello, not nice to meet you, straight to business. Within a week, HOA president. Within 2 weeks, my first citation. Agricultural noise violations. Charlie, my rooster, had been greeting sunrise for 3 years before Princess arrived, but apparently livestock didn't get the memo about her beauty sleep. $500 fine for disturbing quiet hours. Never mind that County Ordinance 247B explicitly protects agricultural operations that predate residential development. But Vivian didn't care about law. She cared about control. The citations multiplied like rabbits. Unsightly storage for hay bales visible from the road. Hay that feeds the cattle that pay what's left of my bills. Commercial vehicle violations for parking my feed truck in my own driveway. Property line disputes, claiming my barn sat 3 feet on HOA common area. A survey error from when they carved up Patterson's land. Each fine escalated, $500, $800, $1,000. My options were pay up, lawyer up, or shut up. With Sarah's medical debt already drowning us, fighting seemed impossible. That's when the parking harassment began. Morning property inspections with her clipboard, documenting every blade of grass that might violate some made-up aesthetic standard. Then parking that Bentley close to my barn entrance, not quite blocking, just close enough to turn backing out equipment into a nightmare dance around German luxury. But 3 weeks ago, she crossed the line that changed everything. Breech birth, calf stuck wrong, mother bellowing in distress, blood on my hands as I fought to save 2 lives. Doc Martinez rushing over with surgical equipment for an emergency C-section. Minutes mattered, seconds mattered. That's when I discovered what kind of person Vivian really was. While I was elbow deep trying to turn a calf, she repositioned her car, moved that $300,000 status symbol directly across my barn doors like a roadblock. When I stumbled out desperate for the vet's equipment, she was sipping coffee at her window, watching my panic like prime-time entertainment. "Move your car! Animals are dying!" She smiled, actually smiled, and walked outside. "Maybe you should have thought about that before violating HOA standards, farm boy." The calf died. The mother barely survived. That's when I realized Vivian Blackstone wasn't just entitled rich trash. She was a predator who fed on other people's suffering. After losing that calf, something inside me shifted. The grief mixed with rage in a way that would have scared Sarah. She always said my temper was like a slow-burn fuse, harmless until it reached the dynamite. But watching Vivian destroy innocent life for sport, that lit every inch of fuse I had. Within 48 hours, 3 more citations appeared taped to my mailbox like legal ransom notes. The paper crinkled in the morning breeze, each one a fresh insult wrapped in official letterhead. Violation 247A, excessive agricultural odors affecting neighboring properties, because apparently cow manure on a cattle ranch was suddenly a health hazard. The irony was thick enough to spread on toast. She bought a house next to a farm, then complained about it smelling like a farm. What's next? Moving beside an airport and complaining about airplane noise? Violation 118-C, unauthorized commercial vehicle storage in residential zone. My grain truck parked in my own driveway where it had sat for 8 years, now suddenly a criminal offense. Violation 301-B, unsightly outdoor equipment storage. My hay baler, the one that actually feeds the cattle that pay my bills, apparently an eyesore, ruining her $1 million view. Each citation demanded compliance within 72 hours or face daily fines starting at $200. The math was brutal. Comply or go bankrupt faster than I already was. But here's what Princess Vivian didn't understand about farmers. Desperation makes us dangerous researchers. When your back's against the wall, you learn every loophole, every protection, every legal technicality that might save your hide. So while she was probably toasting her legal brilliance with champagne, I was buried in dusty county records and state agriculture codes. That's when I stumbled across something that made me smile for the first time in weeks, the Agricultural Protection Act. I'd heard old-timers mention it at farm auctions, but never thought I'd need it. Turns out any agricultural operation established before surrounding residential development gets what lawyers call grandfather protection. My ranch, 1987. Her fancy subdivision, 2019. The law was crystal clear. You can't harass established farms just because rich people moved next door. Even better, I found subsection D buried in the fine print. Deliberate interference with agricultural operations constitutes criminal harassment under state law, with fines up to $10,000 and potential felony charges. Blocking barn access during livestock emergencies, that's textbook interference. Saturday morning found me at the county courthouse filing counter citations against the Willowbrook Estates HOA. $42 in filing fees, money I couldn't spare, but satisfaction I couldn't afford to miss. The clerk, a weathered woman who probably grew up on a farm herself, actually winked when she stamped my paperwork. Monday morning brought sweet justice. I was fixing fence when the sheriff's deputy pulled up to Vivian's mansion. Through my binoculars, property surveillance is perfectly legal by the way, I watched her perfect composure crack like ice on a pond. She read those papers 3 times, each pass making her face redder than her lipstick. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. The caller ID showed her number, and I almost let it go to voicemail just to savor the moment. "You think you're clever, farm boy?" All pretense of civility had vanished from her voice, replaced by pure venom. "Ma'am, I've got cows that produce more valuable opinions than your lawyers," I replied, enjoying every word. "Have a blessed day." The dial tone felt like Christmas morning, but Vivian wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. That afternoon brought reinforcements. Richard Blackstone himself, city councilman and the type of soft-handed politician who married money instead of earning it. He appeared at my fence line in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly income, all smiles and fake charm. "Jake, let's be reasonable here," he said, his politician voice smooth as butter. "Vivian's just trying to maintain community standards. Surely we can work something out." "Your wife blocked my barn during a livestock emergency," I replied without looking up from the fence post I was setting. The satisfying thunk of the post driver echoed across the pasture. "A calf died because of her games. What kind of community standard includes animal cruelty?" His smile never wavered, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have actual proof of intent?" That's when Emma appeared with perfect timing. The girl had inherited her mother's sense of dramatic moments. "Dad, should I show him the security footage from that morning?" We didn't actually have security footage, but Richard didn't know that. His politician's smile flickered just enough to reveal genuine worry. City councilmen don't like being caught on camera enabling their wives' cruelty. "I think this conversation is over," I said, driving the post home with extra force. "You folks have a nice evening." But as they walked away, I heard Vivian hiss something to her husband that chilled my blood. Legal harassment didn't work. Time for more direct methods. The sound of gravel crunching under their expensive shoes carried a promise that this fight was just beginning. I'd shown Vivian that this poor widower had teeth. Now she was about to show me what a cornered rich woman with political connections could really do. Vivian's direct methods hit like a sledgehammer wrapped in legal letterhead. The envelope arrived Tuesday morning via certified mail, thick as a phone book and twice as intimidating. Blackstone and Associates, attorneys at law, embossed in gold that probably cost more than my feed budget. 47 pages of legal threats boiling down to comply or be destroyed. They wanted immediate barn removal for encroachment, cessation of all commercial agricultural activities, and, here's the beautiful part, $25,000 in damages for diminished property values, because apparently my cows were personally responsible for her mansion not appreciating fast enough. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold, bacon grease congealing on Emma's abandoned breakfast plate. The musty smell of legal paper mixed with morning cooking created a combination that made my stomach revolt. "Dad, you look like someone kicked your dog," Emma said, appearing in her school clothes. "Just rich people problems, sweetheart." But she wasn't fooled. 16-year-olds who've watched their mother die develop uncomfortable skills at reading adult panic. The math was brutal. Legal fees alone would finish what medical bills started. I'd already mortgaged everything twice, sold anything valuable that wasn't bolted down. Fighting unlimited resources with empty pockets was like bringing a butter knife to a gunfight. That's when I remembered Grandpa's wisdom. When you can't fight fair, fight smart. The county extension office smelled like decades of coffee and farmer desperation, familiar comfort for anyone who'd survived agricultural crises. Mrs. Henderson, the receptionist who'd known my family since dirt was young, didn't even look up from her paperwork. "Jake Morrison, you're carrying the weight of the world again." "Close enough, Mrs. H. Need someone who knows agricultural legal protections." She directed me to Tom Bradley, extension agent and rare government employee who remembered his job was helping farmers survive, not pushing paperwork. Tom had the weathered look of someone who'd seen every trick rich people used to steal farmland. "Let me guess," Tom said after hearing my story. "Rich folks bought next to your farm, decided farming ruins their view. Now they're trying to lawyer you into bankruptcy." Bingo. Tom's grin was pure mischief. "Jake, you just made my year. There's something called the Agricultural Defense Fund. State provides free legal representation for farmers facing residential harassment. Most people don't know because rich folks have better lobbyists than we do." He handed me a simple business card. Maria Santos, agricultural rights attorney. No gold embossing, no fancy design. The opposite of Vivian's intimidation tactics. Maria's beaten 17 cases like yours. She specializes in making expensive lawyers look like fools, and she has a particular hatred for suburban bullies who think money trumps farming rights. I met Maria that afternoon at Mel's Diner, a place that violated every aesthetic standard Vivian probably held. Cracked vinyl booths, coffee strong enough to wake the dead, and the lingering ghost of 50 years of cigarette smoke. Maria fit perfectly, jeans, work boots, and hands that knew real labor. "Textbook agricultural harassment," she said, flipping through Vivian's legal threats like they were grocery store flyers. "Standard rich person intimidation. They're betting you don't know your rights." She explained right to farm laws protected established agricultural operations from residential interference. Better yet, Vivian's threats constituted reverse discrimination, using wealth to suppress legitimate farming activities. "Here's our play," Maria said, eyes gleaming with the look of someone who enjoyed David versus Goliath fights. "Countersue for harassment, demand they pay your legal fees, and file state agriculture department complaints for farmer protection violations." Friday afternoon, our countersuit was filed. Monday morning brought the explosion. "You've made a terrible mistake, farm boy." Vivian's voice carried new desperation beneath the rage. "My husband has connections. City council, county commissioners, state legislators. We can destroy you." "Ma'am, my life's already been destroyed by people with your attitude. Difference is, I'm rebuilding something worth saving. You're just destroying for sport." But even as I hung up, her threat wasn't empty. Political connections opened doors that legal protections couldn't always close. That's when the real escalation began. Wednesday morning, I discovered my irrigation lines cut. Clean cuts, surgical precision, sabotage designed to look like equipment failure. Thursday brought a surprise visit from county health inspectors, responding to anonymous complaints about unsanitary livestock conditions. They found nothing, but the message was clear. Vivian had moved beyond legal warfare into personal destruction. Friday evening, I found Emma crying in the barn, surrounded by calves she'd raised since her mother died. The smell of hay and animal warmth couldn't comfort her this time. "They're going to take everything, aren't they, Dad?" I knelt beside her, my own hands shaking with rage I couldn't show. "Sweetheart, some fights are worth having even when you're not sure you can win. Your mother understood that. This farm is her legacy too." But as I held my daughter, I realized Vivian had found my weakness. She could attack my property, my livelihood, my reputation, but threatening my family's security crossed a line that required a different kind of response entirely. Vivian's war escalated from paperwork to pure sabotage, faster than a summer storm rolling across farmland. Sunday morning, I walked out to check cattle and smelled trouble before I saw it. That sharp, metallic scent of cut metal hanging in the humid air. My irrigation lines, sliced clean as surgical incisions. Not weather damage, not equipment failure, deliberate destruction designed to look accidental. Monday brought a parade of uniforms that would have been comical if it wasn't bankrupting me. County health inspector responding to anonymous reports of unsanitary livestock conditions. He found nothing but charged me $400 for the privilege of proving my innocence. Tuesday, State Environmental Agency investigating groundwater contamination concerns. In 4 hours of testing, my perfectly maintained waste lagoon, another $800 fee, and a stern lecture about keeping better records. Records I'd been maintaining flawlessly for 15 years. Wednesday, fire marshal, county building inspector, and child protective services, all responding to separate, credible, anonymous complaints, filed within hours of each other. By the time they'd finished traumatizing Emma with questions about whether Daddy made her feel safe on the dangerous farm, I'd lost a full day of work and another chunk of my dwindling savings. Each harassment felt random until Emma made the connection over dinner. "Dad, that lady's been taking pictures of everything. Different spots around our fence line, but always the same fancy camera. How long has this been going on?" "Since you filed those papers against her. Every morning around 7, different corner each day, like she's mapping everything we do, intelligence gathering." Vivian wasn't harassing me randomly. She was conducting surveillance to maximize damage. Professional-level psychological warfare designed to bleed me dry, one bureaucratic cut at a time. But surveillance was a game two could play. Friday morning found me in the hayloft with binoculars, coffee steaming in the morning chill, watching Vivian's routine unfold like clockwork. 7:15 sharp, black Bentley positioned at the northeast property corner. Out came a telephoto camera that cost more than my tractor payments, systematically documenting every aspect of my operation. This time, I was ready. My phone captured her entire surveillance session, trespassing on road easement to photograph private agricultural activities for obvious harassment purposes. Every shot she took, I documented her taking it. Saturday morning brought the most blatant escalation yet. My cattle gate didn't just open itself, it had been completely removed from its hinges and hidden in tall grass 50 yards away. The work required tools, time, and physical presence on my property. Vivian had graduated from harassment to criminal trespassing and vandalism. But here's where her city girl inexperience showed. She'd left boot prints in the soft soil around the gateposts. Designer heels, distinctive tread pattern, pressed deep into earth still damp from Thursday night's rain. I photographed every print before the weather could erase them. I called Maria Santos with the evidence. "This changes the game completely," she said after reviewing my documentation. "We've moved from civil harassment into criminal territory, property damage, trespassing, endangerment of livestock, and public safety. What's our next move?" "We give her enough rope to hang herself, install security cameras, but make them visible. If she's escalating to sabotage, we need to catch her red-handed." Sunday afternoon, I borrowed money I couldn't afford and installed cameras covering the barn area, main gate, and equipment storage. Not hidden, but not obvious either. Visible enough for a careful observer to notice, subtle enough that overconfidence might override caution. That evening, Emma delivered news that made my blood run cold. "Dad, Mrs. Blackstone was meeting with some big guy in a pickup truck this morning. Looked like construction worker. kept pointing at our barn and talking about something serious. Vivian wasn't just escalating personally, she was recruiting help. The harassment campaign was becoming something far more dangerous than legal warfare or property sabotage. But then Emma added something that changed everything. Oh, and I heard her say something about Monday morning and making sure he's not around. Monday morning. Tomorrow. Whatever Vivian was planning, she intended to execute it when I wouldn't be there to interfere. That's when I remembered. Monday was my monthly trip to the farm supply store, followed by a vet appointment for routine cattle vaccinations. A schedule I'd maintained religiously for 8 years. A schedule visible to anyone who'd been watching my routines as carefully as Vivian had. The pieces clicked together like a puzzle solving itself. The surveillance, the escalating sabotage, recruiting outside help, planning for when I'd be away. Vivian wasn't just trying to harass me anymore. She was planning something that required my absence, something big enough to need professional assistance. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, her innocent question hit me like a physical blow. "Dad, are we safe here?" I wanted to say yes, wanted to promise her that our home would always be her sanctuary. But looking out her bedroom window at the darkness beyond our property line, knowing Vivian was out there planning something for tomorrow, I realized safety was no longer something I could guarantee. Whatever Vivian had planned for Monday morning, I'd be ready. But first, I needed to figure out exactly what kind of trap she was setting, and whether my family was the real target. I didn't sleep Sunday night. Every creak of the old farmhouse, every cattle lowing in the distance had me reaching for the baseball bat now permanently stationed beside my bed. But Monday morning brought salvation from the most unlikely source, my 16-year-old daughter and a dusty box of forgotten paperwork. Emma had been procrastinating on her junior year history project about local agricultural heritage, probably hoping the assignment would magically disappear. Sunday night desperation drove her to the County Historical Society, a musty building that smelled like old paper and mothballs, searching for anything about our ranch's past. "Dad, you're not going to believe this," she called from the kitchen table, surrounded by photocopied documents and coffee rings. The excitement in her voice cut through my exhaustion like a shot of pure adrenaline. The manila envelope was labeled Morrison Farm, Emergency Access Routes 1952 in faded blue ink. Inside, yellowed papers stamped with official seals that had aged to brown impressions in the fragile documents. Township records from when the county established agricultural protection zones after World War II, preserving farmland for national food security. But buried in the dense legal language was pure gold. "Right here, Dad," Emma pointed to paragraph 7, subsection C. Agricultural Vehicle Emergency Access Easement, established for rural fire protection and emergency livestock care. Any obstruction of designated agricultural access routes constitutes violation of Federal Ordinance 142-C, with immediate vehicle impoundment authority and fines up to $10,000. The barn doors. My barn doors sat directly on that 70-year-old easement. Every morning, Vivian parked her Bentley across those doors. She wasn't just being a vindictive neighbor, she was violating federal agricultural protection laws. My hands actually trembled as I called Maria Santos. "Emma just found our smoking gun," I said, reading her the ordinance word by word. "Jesus, Jake, this easement supersedes every HOA rule, city regulation, and property restriction in the state. Agricultural emergency access trumps everything, including luxury car parking privileges." Maria's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who lived for David versus Goliath moments. "Every time she blocks your access, you have legal authority for immediate sheriff removal. Better yet, her insurance won't cover damage to vehicles illegally blocking federal agricultural operations." The implications hit me like lightning. Every arrogant morning when Vivian positioned her status symbol across my livelihood, she'd been building my case against her. But Emma wasn't finished digging. "There's more, Dad. Look at this original Patterson farm deed." She spread out another document, this one so old the ink had faded to sepia. The agricultural easement extends past our property line, covering exactly where she parks to spy on us every morning. Criminal trespassing on federal agricultural easement land, not civil harassment, criminal violation of protected agricultural infrastructure. But the most devastating discovery came when Emma cross-referenced property records with her laptop research skills that made me feel ancient. "Dad, her mansion's mortgaged to the max. She owes $2.1 million on a $2.3 million property. Any significant legal judgment could trigger foreclosure." The great Vivian Blackstone, with her designer clothes and political connections, was leveraged to her perfectly manicured fingernails. Rich people often lived on credit and reputation. Damage either, and the house of cards collapsed. She's not wealthy, Maria confirmed after reviewing Emma's research. She's wealthy appearing, big difference. A federal agriculture violation lawsuit could destroy her credit, trigger loan acceleration clauses, and potentially cost her everything. That's when the beautiful irony hit me. I didn't need to outspend Vivian or outlawyer her political connections. I just needed to let her keep doing exactly what she'd been doing, parking illegally while documenting her own federal crimes. The woman systematically destroying my family had unknowingly been constructing the legal framework for her own annihilation. Every surveillance photo, every blocked access, every morning she positioned that Bentley across federal easement was another piece of evidence in her own prosecution. For the first time in months, I wasn't playing defense. I was about to unleash legal hell with ammunition Vivian had gift-wrapped and handed me herself. The moment I hung up with Maria Santos, something shifted in my chest. Like a weight I'd been carrying finally finding its proper place. For months I'd been dancing to Vivian's tune, always reacting, always scrambling. Now I was about to become the choreographer. But turning the tables required more than righteous anger and dusty legal documents. This needed the kind of patient, methodical planning that separates successful farmers from broke ones. We understand that rushing the harvest ruins everything. Tuesday morning found me at the State Agricultural Extension Office, Emma's research folder tucked under my arm like battle plans. The familiar smell of brewing coffee mixed with decades of farmer desperation and occasional triumph. Tom Bradley's office felt like mission control for rural survival. "Jake Morrison, you look like a man who just found buried treasure," Tom said, eyeing my folder. "More like a man who just realized his enemy's been digging her own grave." I spread Emma's historical documents across his desk, watching Tom's expression shift from curiosity to pure delight. "Sweet Jesus," he whistled, studying the easement papers. "Federal agricultural access trumps everything. HOA rules, city ordinances, even state regulations. When someone blocks this easement during agricultural operations, county sheriff removes them immediately. No appeals, no delays, no permission required. And if they refuse to move?" Tom's grin turned predatory. "Agricultural equipment has absolute right-of-way on federal easements. Farmers don't have time for politeness when livestock are dying." He paused meaningfully. "Farming accidents happen, especially when people park where they shouldn't." The phrase farming accidents felt like Christmas morning wrapped in legal protection. Wednesday brought a war council at Mel's Diner, Maria Santos, 2 agricultural law specialists, and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The cracked vinyl booth felt like a command bunker as we planned Vivian's legal destruction. Federal agricultural protection laws were written by people who understood farming reality, Maria explained, adding sugar to coffee that probably didn't need it. When animals are suffering, farmers act first and apologize later. The law protects that urgency. David Lucy, her agricultural equipment specialist, looked like he'd spent actual time on farms. Calloused hands, understanding of machinery. Agricultural equipment operating on federal easement enjoys broad liability protection. Someone blocks legitimate access and gets their property damaged, they assume all responsibility. "In English, please? You call sheriff, report agricultural access blocked, operate your equipment to clear the obstruction. As long as you follow proper procedures and document agricultural necessity, the law protects whatever happens next." His smile suggested he'd seen this play out before. Sarah Williams handled the insurance angle, and her news was even better. Comprehensive auto policies specifically exclude coverage for vehicles damaged while illegally blocking agricultural operations. Standard language in every major policy. Insurance companies refuse to pay for stupidity. The framework was beautiful. Vivian parks illegally. I document agricultural necessity. Clear the obstruction with farming equipment. She pays for everything. Legal, protected, guaranteed to cost her maximum pain. Thursday meant equipment preparation. I spent the morning servicing my John Deere 4050, checking hydraulics, testing the front loader that could push a Buick uphill. 20 tons of American steel, maintained like my life depended on it, because maybe it did. The afternoon brought camera installation with help from Bill Patterson, whose father's original deed had provided our ammunition. "Daddy would have loved this," Bill chuckled, positioning cameras to capture every angle of the barn approach. Some city woman getting schooled using his own property lines. But Thursday evening delivered sobering news. Emma overheard Vivian on her phone discussing permanent solutions and making sure the problem disappears completely. The conversation included words like contractors and accidents happen. "Dad, I think she's planning something bigger than harassment," Emma said quietly, fear creeping into her voice for the first time. Friday brought community mobilization that surprised even me. Word had spread through the rural network, and suddenly half the county wanted to help. 3 neighboring ranchers offered testimony about easement importance. The feed store owner volunteered to document delivery interference. Doc Martinez agreed to provide expert testimony about emergency agricultural access. "This isn't just your fight anymore," Tom Bradley explained during an impromptu meeting. "Vivian's tactics threaten every agricultural operation in the county. If she overrides federal protections here, every farmer becomes vulnerable to suburban legal warfare." Saturday afternoon, I completed operational preparation. Fuel tanks topped off, all systems checked, equipment positioned for immediate response. The familiar smell of diesel and hydraulic fluid felt like armor against whatever Vivian might attempt. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she made the observation that completed our strategy. "Dad, she parks that car exactly the same way every morning. Same angle, same spot, like she's marking territory." Predictability was Vivian's fatal flaw. Arrogance made her patterns obvious, entitlement made her careless, and ignorance of agricultural law made her vulnerable. Everything was ready: documentation, legal authority, equipment, community support, and detailed knowledge of Vivian's routines. All we needed was for her to provide the opportunity. Knowing Vivian's personality, that wouldn't take long. Saturday night brought news that made my coffee taste like poison. Emma had been monitoring Vivian's social media, teenage espionage at its finest, and what she found turned my blood to ice water. Protecting Millbrook Property Values Facebook group, created Friday evening, already boasting 47 angry members. Vivian's manifesto read like suburban warfare propaganda. Dangerous agricultural operations threaten our children. Livestock diseases spread to family homes. Property values plummeting due to one selfish farmer's refusal to modernize. The comments section was a dumpster fire of manufactured outrage. Photos of my tractor labeled "death machine" next to playground. Pictures of my cattle captioned "disease vectors contaminating groundwater." She'd weaponized neighborhood paranoia, transforming normal farming into public menace. But the post that stopped my heart was timestamped 11:47 p.m. Some problems require permanent solutions. Emergency community meeting Sunday 2 p.m. to discuss immediate action. The smell of diesel and fear mixed in my nostrils as I realized Vivian had moved beyond harassment into something far more dangerous. Sunday afternoon found me in the hayloft with binoculars, coffee growing cold as I watched Vivian's emergency meeting unfold like a military briefing. The guest list looked like a conspiracy of suburban power: city council members, HOA presidents from 3 developments, and 2 men in expensive suits who definitely weren't locals. They spent 90 minutes pointing at my property, reviewing what looked like architectural plans, and having animated discussions that involved a lot of serious nodding. Whatever they were plotting required professional consultation and significant money. The meeting's tone reminded me of cattle buyers, clinical, calculating, discussing my life's work like it was commodity pricing. Monday morning brought the opening strike of Vivian's Scorched Earth campaign. Emma's school counselor called requesting an emergency welfare conference based on multiple community concerns about her living situation. Apparently, several parents had expressed worry about a child living in an unsafe agricultural environment, with a father showing signs of increasing instability. The attack was surgical. They weren't targeting my farming operation directly. They were attacking my parental fitness. Use Emma as leverage. Force my choice between keeping my daughter or keeping my land. Brilliant and absolutely evil. Tuesday delivered a coordinated assault that would have impressed military strategists. County zoning office sent 3 inspectors armed with measuring equipment and obvious instructions to find violations. For 4 hours, they documented every structure with the thoroughness of crime scene investigators. Multiple anonymous complaints about agricultural zoning violations, the lead inspector explained, avoiding eye contact like he knew this was a setup. Claims of excessive livestock numbers, commercial equipment in residential zones, setback requirement violations. Every complaint was fabricated, but disproving them required documentation, legal responses, and money I didn't have. The harassment had evolved from random attacks into systematic siege warfare designed to overwhelm my defenses through sheer volume. Wednesday brought the attack that nearly broke me. Someone had contacted Emma's college counselor, claiming I faced federal agriculture violations that would prevent tuition payments. The counselor, trying to help, suggested Emma consider more realistic educational options, given our uncertain family circumstances. Watching my daughter's dreams crumble in real time while she repeated that conversation made something snap inside me. Vivian had crossed the line from property dispute into destroying a child's future. That's when I stopped thinking about defense and started planning total war. Thursday brought the revelation that explained everything. Tom Bradley called with intelligence that made the entire picture crystal clear and absolutely terrifying. "Jake, my friend at County Planning spilled some coffee on the wrong desk and saw something he shouldn't have," Tom said carefully. "There's a development proposal been sitting in committee for 6 months, Willowbrook Estates Phase 2. Your 40 acres sits dead center of the expansion zone. The harassment, legal warfare, character assassination, none of it was about farming noise or property values. It was about forcing my sale so developers could complete an expansion worth millions. I was standing between Vivian and a financial jackpot that dwarfed anything I could imagine. What kind of money motivates this level of destruction? Development rights on your land? Given location and growth projections, probably $8 to $10 million. $10 million. Enough to buy city council silence, fund harassment campaigns, and justify destroying a family. Suddenly, Vivian's escalating desperation made perfect sense. She wasn't protecting her lifestyle. She was protecting a massive payday. Friday evening, I gathered Emma for the conversation that would define our future. The kitchen table where we'd shared 1,000 family meals felt like a war room as I explained what we were really fighting. "They want our land for development, sweetheart. Everything else, citations, harassment, attacks on our reputation, it's all designed to force us out so they can cash in." Emma stared at her homework spread across the table, processing the magnitude of what we faced. When she finally spoke, her voice carried her mother's steel. "Mom died protecting this place. We're not giving it up without a fight." That night, checking security cameras one final time, I realized Vivian's fatal error. She'd escalated stakes so high that compromise was impossible. Tomorrow morning, when she parked that Bentley across my federal easement for what she thought would be the final time, she'd discover what happens when farmers stop playing defense. Friday night, I barely slept. Every hour, I checked the security monitors, watching shadows move across empty pastures, listening for sounds that might signal Vivian's permanent solution arriving early. The smell of coffee and anxiety filled the kitchen as I sat at the table, cleaning my shotgun, not for violence, but for the psychological comfort of being prepared. Emma found me there at 5 a.m., already dressed for what we both knew would be a defining day. "She's going to try something big today, isn't she?" Emma asked, pouring herself coffee like she was 30 instead of 16. "Probably, but, sweetheart, we're ready for whatever comes." I hoped I sounded more confident than I felt. By 6 a.m., I'd completed my morning routine with military precision. Cattle fed, equipment checked, cameras verified, and most importantly, my John Deere 4050 positioned perfectly, fueled, serviced, and ready for legitimate agricultural operations. 20 tons of American steel that had worked this land longer than Vivian had been wealthy. 6:30 a.m. brought the first sign that today was different. Instead of her usual solo arrival, Vivian's Bentley was followed by a white pickup truck that screamed professional contractor. 2 men emerged, one in expensive clothes who looked like management, another in work gear who definitely wasn't there for conversation. I grabbed my binoculars and climbed to the hayloft observation post, watching their meeting unfold like a military briefing. Vivian pointed repeatedly at my barn, the well-dressed man took notes, and the contractor walked the fence line like he was measuring something. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. Whatever they planned required precise timing and professional execution. When they finished, Vivian shook hands with both men, the kind of handshake that seals expensive deals. 7 a.m. sharp, Vivian executed her morning routine with extra arrogance. The Bentley positioned sideways across my barn doors, but this time she didn't just park and leave. She stood beside her car, coffee in hand, staring directly at my security cameras with a smile that promised this was the last time I'd ever worry about barn access. "Enjoy your final morning, farm boy," she called across the distance, loud enough for the cameras to record. "After today, This property dispute gets resolved permanently. But Vivian had made a crucial mistake in her victory celebration. She'd parked exactly where federal agricultural easement law said she couldn't, while announcing her intent to permanently interfere with agricultural operations, all captured in high-definition video with timestamp and audio. I called the county sheriff's office from my documented landline. This is Jake Morrison at 2847 Rural Route 12. I've got a vehicle illegally blocking federal agricultural easement access during emergency livestock operations, requesting immediate removal under County Ordinance 142C. We'll have a deputy there within 30 minutes, Mr. Morrison. Deputy Martinez, I'll need agricultural access cleared immediately. I've got medical documentation of livestock requiring emergency care, and federal easement law gives me authority to clear obstructions using appropriate agricultural equipment. There was a pause. Mr. Morrison, are you saying you intend to move the obstructing vehicle yourself? I'm saying I intend to access my barn using federally protected agricultural easement rights. If someone's parked where they shouldn't be, that's their problem, not mine. Understood, sir. We'll have a deputy on scene to document the agricultural necessity and ensure proper procedures are followed. Perfect. Official law enforcement would witness every moment of what happened next. While waiting for the deputy, I called Doc Martinez with our prearranged emergency. Doc, I've got that calf with the breathing issues acting up again. Need you here ASAP for emergency evaluation. On my way, Jake. Same respiratory distress symptoms? Exactly. Life-threatening situation requiring immediate barn access for emergency veterinary care. The pieces were falling into place with beautiful precision. Agricultural emergency, federal easement violation, law enforcement documentation, and veterinary witness to the legitimate need for immediate access. 8:15 a.m., Deputy Martinez arrived, followed immediately by Doc Martinez's veterinary truck. Both vehicles positioned to capture every angle of what was about to unfold. Mr. Morrison, we've documented the easement violation and confirmed your agricultural emergency, Deputy Martinez announced loud enough for Vivian to hear clearly. You have federal authority to clear obstructions using appropriate agricultural equipment. The owner of the obstructing vehicle has been notified and refused to move. Vivian stood beside her Bentley, arms crossed, still smiling like she held winning cards. That farmer can wait until I'm ready to move. This is harassment, deputy. I want him arrested for threatening my property. Ma'am, you're parked on federal agricultural easement during documented livestock emergency. Mr. Morrison has legal authority to access his barn using necessary equipment. That's when I climbed into my tractor cabin, the familiar smell of diesel and hydraulic fluid wrapping around me like armor. The engine turned over with a satisfying rumble that announced 20 tons of agricultural authority was about to assert federal easement rights. Vivian's smile finally faltered as she realized her expensive car was about to meet American farming equipment, and every second would be recorded by law enforcement for legal protection. The morning air crackled with tension as my John Deere 4050 rumbled to life, diesel smoke rising like incense for the justice about to be served. 20 tons of American steel faced off against German luxury, and everyone present knew only one would emerge unscratched. By 8:30 a.m., word had spread through the rural network faster than wildfire. Pickup trucks lined the county road as neighbors arrived to witness what they sensed would be a defining moment for agricultural rights in our county. Even Emma had positioned herself at a safe distance, phone recording everything for what she called historical documentation. Vivian stood beside her Bentley, designer heels planted in gravel, arms crossed in defiance that would have been admirable if it wasn't so completely misguided. The morning sun reflected off her car's pristine paint job, a $250,000 status symbol about to learn the difference between suburban intimidation and agricultural necessity. "You wouldn't dare touch my car, you ignorant farm boy!" Vivian's voice carried across the pasture, shrill with panic she was trying to disguise as authority. "I'll sue you for everything you own." Deputy Martinez stepped between us, documentation ready. "Ma'am, Mr. Morrison has federal agricultural easement authority. You've been notified of the violation and refused to comply. What happens next is entirely legal." Doc Martinez emerged from my barn, perfect timing for theatrical effect. "Jake, I've got a calf in respiratory distress. I need access to my emergency equipment in the truck immediately. Every minute counts." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Nothing motivates rural communities like watching someone threaten livestock welfare for suburban convenience. I leaned out of my tractor cabin, giving Vivian one final chance. "Ma'am, I'm requesting you move your vehicle so I can access my barn for emergency veterinary care. This is your last opportunity to relocate voluntarily." "Go to hell, farm boy. I'm not moving for you or your smelly animals." Her mistake. Every word recorded by Deputy Martinez's body camera, every witness hearing her prioritize car parking over animal welfare. In rural communities, that's basically confessing to moral bankruptcy. Deputy Martinez, please note that agricultural access has been formally requested and formally denied. I'm now proceeding with federally protected agricultural operations. I shifted the John Deere into gear, hydraulics whining as the front loader adjusted to perfect angle. The crowd pressed closer, phones recording what would become the most satisfying video in county history. The approach was deliberately slow, methodical, professional. No anger, no rushing, just 20 tons of farming equipment exercising federally protected rights. The blade made contact with the Bentley's rear quarter panel with a sound like expensive metal learning about agricultural priorities. "Stop, you're damaging my car!" Vivian's composure finally cracked completely, revealing the spoiled brat beneath the designer exterior. "Ma'am, I'm accessing my federally protected agricultural easement," I called back, continuing the slow, inexorable push. "Your vehicle is illegally positioned on agricultural operations land." The Bentley moved sideways with surprising ease, expensive suspension compressing as German engineering met American agricultural determination. Metal scraped against gravel, creating a symphony of justice that had the crowd cheering. "That's $50,000 in damages!" Vivian screamed, her voice breaking with hysteria. Deputy Martinez consulted his documentation. "Ma'am, your comprehensive insurance policy excludes coverage for vehicles damaged while illegally blocking agricultural operations. This is considered owner negligence." That's when the beautiful irony hit everyone present. Vivian's insurance wouldn't cover a penny of damage because she'd parked illegally on federal easement. Every dollar of repair costs would come directly from her leveraged finances. As I cleared enough space to access my barn, Doc Martinez drove his truck through with emergency lights flashing, playing his part perfectly. The crowd applauded as agricultural access was restored and veterinary care could proceed. But Vivian wasn't finished humiliating herself. "This is assault, criminal destruction. I want him arrested immediately." "Ma'am," Deputy Martinez replied with infinite patience, "Mr. Morrison exercised federal agricultural easement rights during documented livestock emergency. Every action was legally protected. However, your illegal parking on federal agricultural land constitutes criminal trespassing." The color drained from Vivian's face as she realized the trap she'd walked into. Not only was she liable for all damages to her own vehicle, but she was potentially facing criminal charges for federal land violations. "This isn't over," she shouted, climbing into her damaged Bentley. "My husband will have your badge. I'll sue this entire county." As she drove away, engine making expensive noises and trailing pieces of European luxury, the crowd erupted in applause. Someone started chanting USA, which seemed appropriate for watching American farming equipment defend agricultural rights against suburban tyranny. Tom Bradley appeared at my side, grinning like Christmas morning. "Jake, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Agricultural easement rights demonstrated with perfect legal protection." Emma ran over, eyes shining with pride. "Dad, Mom would have loved watching you defend our farm like that." For the first time in months, I felt like Sarah's husband again, a man who protected what mattered most. The aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling in perfect sequence, each consequence more satisfying than the last. Within 48 hours, Vivian's insurance company officially denied her claim for the Bentley repairs. The adjuster's report was brutal. Policy excludes coverage for vehicles damaged during illegal activities, including trespassing on federal agricultural easement during documented livestock emergency. $53,000 in damages, all coming out of her highly leveraged pocket. By Friday, Maria Santos called with news that made me smile for the first time in months. "Jake, the Blackstones quietly listed their mansion yesterday. Asking price dropped to $1.9 million. They need to sell fast to cover legal fees and car repairs." "What about their development plans?" "Dead in the water. The county planning committee unanimously voted to strengthen agricultural protection zoning after your case demonstrated how developers were harassing farmers. No new residential development within 2 miles of established agricultural operations. The irony was beautiful. Vivian's harassment had triggered the exact legal protections that would permanently prevent her development dreams. The community transformation was even more remarkable. What started as suburban versus rural conflict evolved into something approaching harmony. The viral video of my tractor teaching the Bentley about agricultural rights had garnered over 2 million views, bringing unexpected attention to our little county. Tourism inquiries poured in from people wanting to visit that farm where the guy pushed the Karen's car. Emma, ever entrepreneurial, suggested weekend farm tours explaining agricultural protection laws. Dad, we could call it justice tours and donate proceeds to agricultural legal defense. The first tour weekend brought 43 visitors, including 3 law students researching agricultural rights for their thesis projects. Watching city folks learn about federal easement protections while petting calves felt like Sarah would have approved. Education and healing happening simultaneously. 6 months later, the Sarah Morrison Agricultural Heritage Scholarship was established with proceeds from the tours, legal settlement money, and donations from farmers across 3 counties who'd heard our story. The first recipient was a young woman planning to study agricultural law, exactly what Emma was considering for her own college future. Mom always said farming was about growing more than crops, Emma observed one evening as we watched sunset paint the pastures gold. She meant growing community, growing understanding, growing the next generation of people who will protect this way of life. The old Patterson place, Vivian's former mansion, sold to a young family who actually appreciated rural life. They introduced themselves by bringing homemade cookies and asking permission to let their kids pet our calves. The father was a veterinarian, the mother taught environmental science, and their children understood that cow manure was fertilizer, not pollution. The new HOA, completely reorganized after Vivian's departure, officially recognized agricultural protection rights and established a good neighbor policy, encouraging cooperation between residential and agricultural properties. They even helped fund repairs to the county road that my equipment used for hay deliveries. Tom Bradley retired from the extension service, but continued visiting, claiming our coffee was better than the government stuff. Jake, what you did changed agricultural protection enforcement statewide. Every county extension office now has your case as an example of how farmers can defend their rights legally. Deputy Martinez, now promoted to sergeant, occasionally stopped by during patrols, always commenting on how peaceful the area had become since certain troublemakers relocated to bother farmers elsewhere. A year later, Emma graduated high school with early admission to agricultural law school, planning to specialize in farmer protection advocacy. Her valedictory speech about the importance of agricultural heritage brought the entire auditorium to their feet. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching our cattle graze in pastures that would never become subdivisions, Emma asked the question that completed our healing. Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of how we fought for this place? I thought about Sarah's strength during her final months, her determination to protect what mattered most, her belief that some things were worth fighting for regardless of the cost. Sweetheart, your mother always said the best way to honor people who can't fight anymore is to fight harder for what they believed in. I think she'd be proud that we didn't let bullies destroy what she loved. The evening air carried the scent of hay, diesel fuel, and the satisfaction that comes from standing your ground when it matters most. Some fights are worth having, especially when you win.
You know, Jack's story reminds me of something I've noticed over the years. These HOA presidents, they count on you being too tired and too broke to fight back. Vivian probably thought that a widow farmer with medical debt would just fold. But that 1952 agriculture assessment Emma found, Vivian probably drove past that barns 100 times, thinking of her little parking strategy. She never thought some dusty paperwork would actually trump her Bentley. The agriculture protection laws don't care how much your car costs. They don't care who your husband knows. So when Jack called the sheriff's deputy, he wasn't asking for a favor. He was asking for enforcement of existing law. I keep thinking about the moment when Vivian yelled, "Go to hell, farm boy," into the deputy's body camera with 30 neighbors watching. Sometimes people defeat themselves. Have you ever dealt with people who think their connections make them untouchable? I'm curious what happened when they finally met something they couldn't buy. Drop it in the comments. If this one hits home, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't, because there are more Jack Morrisons out there than Vivian Blackwell. Sometimes the good guys win quietly